4:47 a.m. Rural Pennsylvania. A two-lane state route off Interstate 81. 18 federal agents and 6 state police tactical officers moved across a gravel parking lot in the dark. No sirens. No lights. Boots on loose stone. The neon sign above the entrance still glowed. Devil's Den. Red and white tubes, flickering at the edge of the lot. The sign had been there for 11 years. Families drove past it every week on the way to the grocery store, the hardware store, the high school football field. Nobody looked twice. Tonight, 3 separate teams converged on that building. Homeland Security Investigations, Central Pennsylvania Task Force. Pennsylvania State Police Tactical Unit. Cumberland County Sheriff's deputies on the perimeter. The lead team hit the front entrance at 4:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. The second team moved through the loading dock at the rear. A third team staged at the utility corridor entrance along the building's east wall. The raid had a specific target. Not the front of the club. Not the bar, the stage, the cash register. Behind all of it. Behind a beverage cooler in a back utility corridor. Behind a panel that, on the building's original blueprint, was marked as storage. What was behind that panel had been on a Pennsylvania State Missing Persons Board for months. 4 names. 4 young women, ages 22 through 26, from 3 different towns across Pennsylvania and West Virginia. Combined, they had been missing for 118 days. None of their families knew where they were. The detail that unraveled all of it was a single line in a state trooper's shift report. 1 sentence. Filed at 3:23 a.m. on a Thursday in November of 2025. 7 months before this morning. The trooper who wrote it was not assigned to a trafficking investigation. He was not looking for anyone. He had stopped at a rural fuel station off Route 11 because a cashier had placed a non-emergency call about a suspicious vehicle. That is where this starts. November 6, 2025. The fuel station was a 4-pump lot attached to a convenience store at a crossroads outside of Carlisle, Pennsylvania. The cashier on shift, a woman named in the incident report only by her initials, had noticed a white cargo van pulling in for the 4th consecutive night at approximately 3 a.m. The van was unmarked. No company logo, no magnetic placard, no DOT number on the panel. The driver refueled, paid cash at the pump, and never went inside. The engine stayed running. The driver never got out of the cab. 4 nights. Same van. Same time. Same routine. She wrote down the plate on the back of a receipt. Then she called the non-emergency line. Trooper Dennis Valcara, 8 years on the Cumberland Barracks, took the call. He noted the plate, pulled the vehicle registration en route, and reached the fuel station within 12 minutes of the call. The van was already gone. Valcara ran the plate. It came back clean. Registered to a limited liability company with a Pennsylvania incorporation date of March 2025. Company name, Ridgeview Hospitality Group. No outstanding violations. No warrants. 1 vehicle registered. Valcara drove the most probable route back toward Carlisle. 1 mile up the state route, he spotted taillights turning into a gravel lot. He did not follow immediately. He pulled to the shoulder and watched. The taillights extinguished near the east side of a building. The building's sign read Devil's Den. No patron traffic at 3:14 a.m. The lot held 6 vehicles parked near the staff entrance. The van had joined them. Valcara returned to his patrol vehicle and filed his shift report. The entry for that stop occupied 1 sentence. Vehicle logged returning to Devil's Den, 0314. No patron activity observed. He did not flag it for follow-up. It was a routine observation. He had a county to cover and 4 more hours left on shift. The report was uploaded to the State Police's Integrated Incident Database at 3:23 a.m. and was not read again for 19 days. The The Central Pennsylvania Human Trafficking Task Force, operated jointly by HSI and the Pennsylvania State Police Bureau of Criminal Investigation, ran a quarterly review of incident reports flagged for specific keyword combinations. The automated filter was not sophisticated. It caught mentions of certain venue categories, certain vehicle descriptions, and cross-referenced them against active missing persons files. The filter had a high false positive rate. Analysts spent most of their review sessions closing out irrelevant matches. On November 25, 2025, analyst Rachel Torrance, assigned to the task force's intelligence cell at the Harrisburg field office, was running her weekly queue. She flagged 32 reports for preliminary review. 30 of them were closed within 40 minutes. The Valcara report was the 31st. The flag that triggered it was the company name, Ridgeview Hospitality Group. 3 weeks earlier, a separate missing persons intake at the West Virginia State Police had included a statement from a family member who mentioned their daughter had mentioned a job offer from a company called Ridgeview. The daughter was 24 years old. She had left her apartment in Morgantown on September 29, 2025, telling a roommate she had an appointment. She had not been seen since. Torrance pulled the West Virginia file. Then she pulled the Pennsylvania Missing Persons Index. 2 additional open cases had been entered in October and early November. A 22-year-old from Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, last seen October 8th. A 26-year-old from Harrisburg, last seen October 22nd. None of the 3 cases had been linked to each other. None had been linked to Devil's Den. None had been linked to Ridgeview Hospitality Group. Now they were. Torrance did not close the queue and go home. She called HSI Special Agent Marcus Delaney at 11:40 p.m. and laid it out in under 3 minutes. Delaney told her to hold the file and not enter anything into the database yet. He would be in the office at 6 a.m. What strikes us about how this case almost didn't happen? A single keystroke, a different analyst pulling Valcara's report on a different day before the West Virginia file was entered, and the connection might have been missed entirely. 3 young women had each vanished within a 60-day window, each with a trace element pointing toward the same corporate name, and it had taken a 4 a.m. fuel stop observation and a quarterly keyword filter to put those threads in the same room. That is how close it came to going nowhere. Delaney arrived at the Harrisburg office at 5:58 a.m. on November 26th. By 8 a.m., the task force had subpoenaed Ridgeview Hospitality Group's Pennsylvania corporate filing. The registered agent was a man named in court filings as the club's operator, identified in this reconstruction by the name Warren Callis. The filing listed 2 additional officers. A manager, identified here as Terry Grubb. An accountant, identified here as Frank Osei. Ridgeview had been incorporated 8 months earlier. Its stated business purpose, hospitality and event management consulting. It had one asset on file, the cargo van. Devil's Den itself was licensed under a separate LLC that had held the liquor license for 9 years. The new company had no apparent connection to the club on paper. But the van that delivered to the club at 3 a.m. was registered to Ridgeview. And Ridgeview's registered agent was the same man who signed the club's operational permits. That is not a coincidence. That is a structure. Delaney requested a surveillance authorization from the federal magistrate on November 27th. Approved the same afternoon. 2 HSI surveillance assets began rotating coverage of Devil's Den and the surrounding state route on November 29th. A license plate reader was installed on the utility pole at the crossroads near the fuel station, covering the primary ingress route. Phone toll records for Ridgeview's registered agent were subpoenaed on December 2nd. The first 3 weeks of surveillance produced little. The van moved 3 times per week, consistently between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. It always returned to the lot before dawn. It was never observed carrying anything identifiable. The club operated normal hours during the day and evening. No irregular foot traffic. No unusual deliveries during business hours. Put yourself in Delaney's position for a moment. 3 months of a missing persons window, a company name connecting 3 open cases, a van making nocturnal runs to a strip club, and nothing that crosses the evidentiary threshold. Every day, the surveillance logs grow longer. Every day, the gap between what you suspect and what you can prove stays exactly the same. The task force needed something inside the building. Before the surveillance logs and the financial records, before the building permit discrepancy, there were 3 women who had simply stopped being present in the world. Their families spent weeks navigating missing persons processes that were not designed to move quickly. Each family had been told, in different ways, by different agencies, that adults have the right to leave. That there was no immediate evidence of foul play. That the process takes time. The 24-year-old from Morgantown had been a third-year nursing student. Her mother drove to Morgantown twice after the disappearance and walked the streets near her daughter's apartment building, asking people if they had seen her. She printed photographs on a home printer and taped them to utility poles. The West Virginia State Police Missing Persons Intake Officer noted in her file that the family was cooperative and provided extensive documentation of the daughter's routine and contacts. The 22-year-old from Chambersburg worked part-time at a regional grocery chain while taking online coursework toward a business administration certificate. Her roommate told investigators she had seemed excited about a job opportunity in the days before she disappeared. She had mentioned better pay, flexible hours, something in hospitality or event work. The roommate did not have a name for the company. She had not thought to ask. The 26-year-old from Harrisburg had been supporting a younger sibling and an aging parent. She worked 2 service industry jobs. When she stopped coming home, her sibling called the Harrisburg City Police, then the State Police, then a local community organization that worked with missing persons cases. 3 separate agencies. 3 separate intakes. No cross-referencing. No connection drawn between her disappearance and the 2 women already in the open cases index. 3 women. 3 families. 3 separate entry points into a system that was not built to see the pattern. That context matters when we talk about the 19 days Valcara's report sat unread. The families of those 3 women spent those same 19 days making calls that went to voicemail, waiting for callbacks that arrived days late, and printing more photographs. The obstacle was structural. Devil's Den's interior had never been mapped beyond the public floor plan submitted to the county for its liquor license. That floor plan showed a bar area, a performance stage, 2 restrooms, and a storage room along the east wall. No utility corridor. No back rooms beyond the designated storage. A building permit filed in 2019 for HVAC upgrades showed contractor drawings that did not match the liquor license floor plan. The east wall storage room in the contractor drawings was 9 feet shorter than the one in the liquor license floor plan. 11 feet of interior space, not accounted for on either document, sat between the storage room's east wall and the building's exterior. Torrance found this discrepancy in the county permit records on December 19th. She pulled the HVAC contractor's invoice. Paid in full, cash, the same week as the permit filing. The contractor had since dissolved. 11 feet. Roughly the width of a standard interior room. The task force requested a federal search warrant on January 8, 2026. The supporting affidavit ran 41 pages. The presiding magistrate reviewed and approved it on January 15th, with a 30-day execution window. Before HSI executed, the task force made a decision that would add 5 months to the case's timeline, but substantially widen its scope. They were going to keep watching. Here is the part that will probably generate disagreement. The decision to extend surveillance past the January warrant, rather than execute immediately, was tactically sound, but carries a cost that is worth naming. For every week of additional intelligence gathering, the 4 women inside that building, if the task force's working theory was correct, spent another week in that space. The trade-off between operational thoroughness and immediate rescue is real, and in this case, The math landed on the side of building the larger case. Whether that was the right call is not a simple question. Delaney and the task force supervisors chose to use the January warrant window to build financial evidence sufficient to prosecute Callis, Grubb, and Osei on federal charges that would hold, rather than a state arrest on probable cause that could collapse at arraignment. They extended the surveillance authorization. They added a second vehicle tracker on the cargo van. They subpoenaed 6 months of the club's cash register records. What the cash register records showed was a pattern that had no legitimate explanation. Devil's Den reported weekly cash receipts in line with a rural Pennsylvania adult entertainment club. Average weekly gross between $18,000 and $22,000. Standard for a venue of its size and location, according to the task force's financial analyst. But embedded within those receipts, on specific days of each week, were single transaction entries logged as private event booking deposits. These ranged from $800 to $1,400 each. They appeared on the same days of the week, every week, with no corresponding booking records in the club's event calendar. 11 entries over a 10-week sample period. Total, $11,200. Logged as revenue, taxed, passed through the register like ordinary income. The strange part wasn't the amounts. It was the schedule. Private event bookings at a club of this type typically clustered around weekends. These entries appeared on Tuesdays and Thursdays, consistently, without exception. The task force's financial analyst noted it in a memo dated February 3rd. Recurring fixed-day cash intake not consistent with standard event booking pattern. Possible structured cash absorption. Delaney looked at the surveillance logs. The van's 3 times per week runs landed on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The cash entries appeared 2 days after each run. The sequence was, van arrives, 2 days later, a cash entry. The task force filed the financial memo under sealed supplement to the warrant affidavit on February 17th. By March, they had identified a 4th potential missing persons connection. A 23-year-old from State College, Pennsylvania, had been entered into the Missing Persons Index on February 28th. Her last known contact had mentioned a man named in the case file only by a nickname. That nickname appeared in the phone toll records for the van's driver, logged from a cell tower near the State College campus on February 18th, 10 days before she disappeared. 4 open cases. 4 names on the board. 118 days combined. The detail that stuck in the investigation was mundane. The toll record review showed that the van's driver, in the weeks before each disappearance, had made repeated calls to numbers in the relevant town. Not to the missing women directly, but to local businesses. A restaurant. A temp agency. A hair salon. Each call was brief. A minute or less. Inquiring, the task force theorized, about who was looking for work, who was new in town, who might respond to a job offer. That is how Ridgeview Hospitality Group recruited. 1 town, 1 phone, 1 call at a time. In late March, the task force's intelligence cell pulled billing records on the secondary phone number connected to the van driver. That number had placed 47 calls in the 60 days preceding the State College disappearance. 19 of those calls were to businesses in Center County. 6 were to the same temp agency over a 3-week period. The temp agency's front desk worker, interviewed in May, recalled a man calling multiple times to ask about available female workers, about whether the agency had clients looking for event staffing work, about what a competitive pay rate would look like for short-term placements. She had thought he was a recruiter. She had given him publicly available information and then stopped returning his calls when he called a 7th time. She did not know the name of the 23-year-old from State College. She did not know the young woman had used the same agency to find her last 2 part-time jobs. Whether the van driver obtained the young woman's contact information through the agency's records or through some other means remained an open question. What investigators could document was the timeline. The van driver's calls to Center County businesses began on February 2nd. The 23-year-old was last seen on February 28th. In between, she had told a friend by text message that she had been offered a hospitality coordinator position with good pay and lodging provided. She had seemed cautious but interested. The friend had texted back asking for the company name. The response was a single word: Ridgeview. That text message was recovered from the friend's phone during a voluntary interview in March. It was entered into evidence under the sealed warrant supplement on March 19th. It was also the clearest direct link between a victim and the corporate identity the task force had been building a case around for 4 months. Most people assume trafficking investigations crack open through informants or wiretap intercepts. In this case, it was a fuel station cashier who wrote a plate number on the back of a receipt and a quarterly keyword filter in a state database. The technology that mattered here was not sophisticated. What mattered was that the one person who noticed something out of the ordinary, a woman working a 4-pump convenience store at 3 in the morning, decided to make a call. And saw that same van pull in for the 4th night running. Would you have noticed? Would you have written it down? By April of 2026, the task force had enough to move. Delaney briefed the HSI Assistant Special Agent in charge on April 14th. The recommendation was a joint federal-state takedown, coordinated with the Pennsylvania State Police Bureau of Criminal Investigation and Cumberland County Sheriff. The county prosecutor's office was notified under seal on April 22nd. The obstacle that emerged in late April was logistical rather than evidentiary. The structural question of how to safely breach the utility corridor, specifically, how to access whatever was behind the east wall panel, required information the task force did not have. The building's current interior configuration was unknown beyond the floor plan discrepancy. There was no way to confirm from outside what the 11-foot space contained or how it was accessed without entering the building. An HSI structural specialist reviewed the HVAC contractor drawings on May 2nd and identified 3 possible access configurations: a hinged panel in the storage room's east wall, a sliding section behind a fixed shelving unit, or a concealed door accessed from the utility corridor along the building's exterior. Based on the age of the structure and the style of the HVAC modifications, the specialist's assessment was that the most probable configuration was a hinged or friction-fit panel recessed behind a large fixed object, most likely a commercial refrigeration unit. That assessment shaped the breach plan. The team accessing the utility corridor would be equipped with a Halligan bar and bolt cutters for any secondary locks. Entry timing would be simultaneous with the front team to prevent any interior response to the sound of breach. Operational date: Tuesday, July 22nd, 2026. 4:45 a.m. staging call. The lead supervisor on the joint operation requested a weather check for the county. Clear skies. Temperature at 4 a.m., 68 degrees Fahrenheit. No precipitation, no wind advisory. The lot would be dry. Footing on gravel would be stable. 3 teams. 18 federal agents and 6 state police tactical officers. County deputies on the 2 road egress points. 2 ambulances staged 4 blocks west on the state route, lights off. In the 2 weeks before the operational date, Delaney's team had run 2 separate tabletop rehearsals of the breach sequence with the full joint element. Every agent and officer knew the assignment. The front team's role was to secure the bar area and prevent exit through the club's front and side doors. The loading dock team's role was to reach the storage room's east wall within 90 seconds of the front breach. The utility corridor element was a contingency. If the loading dock team encountered an unexpected lock or obstruction, the utility corridor team would attempt access from the building's exterior on Delaney's command. The 2 ambulances had been briefed by the task force's medical coordinator. The paramedic crews knew they were responding to a possible prolonged confinement scenario involving multiple patients. They carried IV supplies, hydration fluids, and trauma assessment equipment. They had been told to expect patients who might be disoriented, who might not respond to questions in a predictable way, who might be frightened of law enforcement presence. The paramedic supervisor had requested and received a victim services coordinator from the state police, who would be positioned in one of the ambulances and deployed as soon as the scene was declared medically safe. That coordination had taken 11 days to finalize. It is the kind of detail that does not appear in operational summaries, but matters enormously in the first minutes after a door opens. At 4:26 a.m., 19 minutes before the front team was to approach the building, a motion sensor alert triggered from one of the surveillance assets covering the lot's east side. A vehicle, not the white van, had entered the lot from a service road that ran behind the building's north face. The service road was not on any map the task force had pulled. It was not visible from the state route. The alert went to Delaney's command position in an HSI vehicle parked 700 yards from the lot. A secondary surveillance feed confirmed one vehicle, a dark-colored pickup, had parked behind the building's north wall. One occupant, visible on thermal. The occupant had not entered the building. He was seated in the cab. Delaney had 17 minutes. The operational plan had not accounted for an additional vehicle at the rear of the building. A county deputy on the north egress point was repositioned to cover the service road. A 2-agent HSI element was tasked with approaching the pickup from the service road's opposite entrance and securing the occupant simultaneously with the front breach. The change required a radio relay to all 3 breach teams and a timing adjustment to account for the 2-agent element's position. The adjustment took 11 minutes. The new breach time, 4:47 a.m. At 4:46, all teams confirmed, ready. At 4:47, the front team hit the entrance. The front doors of Devil's Den were steel-framed with a commercial deadbolt. The ram cracked the frame on the first strike. 3 agents entered the bar area. Empty. Overhead fluorescent lights on a timer had not yet triggered. The team moved with mounted lights. The bar, the stage, the tables, all clear. The secondary team entered the loading dock at the building's rear on the same count. The dock door was unlocked. It opened into a utility alcove that connected to the main storage room. 2 agents cleared the alcove in under 30 seconds and moved toward the storage room's east wall. The storage room's east wall held a floor-to-ceiling commercial beverage cooler. Double glass doors. Industrial compressor unit running. The cooler was bolted to the wall brackets on both sides, but not sealed to the east wall behind it. 1 agent with the Halligan slid the hook behind the cooler's right bracket and pulled. The cooler shifted 8 inches from the wall. Behind it, a panel approximately 48 inches wide and 72 inches tall, set flush with the wall. No handle visible. A friction fit release on the right side, exactly as the structural specialist had assessed. The Halligan's flat head went into the seam. 1 pull. The panel opened inward. The corridor beyond was approximately 11 feet deep and 12 feet wide. A single work light on an extension cord ran along the ceiling. 4 military-style folding cots arranged along the left wall. 4 women, all present, all awake. The lead agent in the storage room gave the medical call sign over the radio at 4:51 a.m. The 2 ambulances staged on the state route received the call and moved to the lot at 4:52. The women were assessed on scene. The incident summary filed by the paramedic supervisor noted hydration protocols initiated on all 4. Prolonged confinement assessment conducted. All 4 were conscious and responsive. All 4 were transported to a regional medical center. The names, held from public disclosure, pending family notification, matched 4 open missing persons files. The 22-year-old from Chambersburg. The 23-year-old from State College. The 24-year-old from Morgantown, West Virginia. The 26-year-old from Harrisburg. Combined missing time, 118 days. Warren Callis was taken into custody in the club's office, which opened off a hallway adjacent to the bar area. He was found seated at a desk. He did not resist. He did not speak. He was handcuffed and walked through the bar area and out the front door into the gravel lot, under the neon sign that still glowed red and white. Terry Grubb was taken into custody at a residential address in Carlisle at 4:58 a.m. A separate state police element had staged at his home during the club operation and executed simultaneously on the search warrant extension. Frank Osei was located in the cab of the dark pickup behind the building's north wall, secured by the two-agent HSI element without incident. The driver of the cargo van, identified in court filings under a separate operational alias, was not at the club that morning. A warrant for his arrest was issued the same day. His location at the time of this report remains outstanding. By 6:15 a.m., the gravel lot held 8 county and state police vehicles, 2 ambulances, and a Cumberland County Mobile Command Unit. The neon sign was still running. Photographs from the scene show the Devil's Den marquee lit against the early July sky, agents working the lot below it in agency-marked vests, the front door of the club open. That image, the sign, the light, the familiar roadside marquee that looked like every other roadside marquee on every rural state route in central Pennsylvania, circulated through the regional law enforcement briefing packages that morning. Not for public release, for the task force debrief, because that is the operational lesson embedded in this case. The sign was ordinary. The location was ordinary. 11 years, licensed, permitted, taxed, visible. Families drove past it. State inspectors had visited twice for liquor license compliance in the past 3 years. The deliveries arrived at 3 in the morning, not because the club was hidden, but because it was not. The routine was the cover. The HSI evidence processing team arrived at the building at 6:40 a.m. and began systematic documentation of the interior. Every room was photographed in sequence before anything was touched. The corridor behind the panel was photographed from multiple angles before any of the cots or personal items were moved. The work light on the extension cord was photographed in place. A forensic technician documented the door panel itself, the friction fit mechanism, the way the commercial beverage cooler had been bracketed to conceal the seam. The processing team noted that the panel showed no visible external markings, no lock, no hinge hardware on the exterior face. Someone who did not know it was there would not see it. Inside the corridor, the evidence team cataloged what had been left behind. 4 folding cots with institutional bedding. A plastic storage bin containing personal items that appeared to belong to the 4 women. A small battery-powered clock mounted on the far wall. A single shelf holding water bottles, several of them empty. A plastic bucket positioned in the corridor's far corner with a lid. The air inside the corridor, according to the processing team's notes, was warm and carried a quality consistent with a space that had been sealed and occupied for an extended period. The battery-powered clock was still running. Its hands showed the correct time. Someone had been changing its battery. The items in the plastic storage bin were logged individually and cross-referenced against the personal effects inventories from each woman's missing persons file. Photographs. A paperback novel. A phone charger with no corresponding phone. A birthday card, handwritten. The lead evidence technician noted in her log that the birthday card had a postmark from the previous October. It had been mailed. Someone's family had sent a birthday card that had found its way into that room. That detail does not appear in the public filing. It is in the evidence inventory, page 11. The forensic processing of the corridor took 4 hours. The rest of the building took another 7. The club's office yielded 3 laptops, 2 external hard drives, a ledger book with handwritten entries spanning 14 months, and a prepaid cell phone that had been powered off. The bar area's point-of-sale system was imaged in place. The storage room was cleared and processed. The loading dock's alcove showed evidence of recent cleaning. By 1 p.m. on July 22nd, The evidence team had filled 43 evidence collection bags. The chain of custody logs ran to 19 pages. Here is what this case tells us about how these operations work. They do not hide behind unusually suspicious facades. They hide behind the ordinariness that makes everyone look away. The van refueled at the same pump 4 nights in a row, and for 3 of those nights, nobody wrote anything down. On the 4th night, one person decided to make a call. One call. One line in a shift report. 19 days unread. A keyword match. A corporate name. An 11-foot discrepancy in a building permit. That is the full chain. Every link matters. Any single link absent, and the chain does not hold. One detail that kept pulling my attention when reviewing the case file: the cash register entries. 11 fixed schedule deposits, logged as private event bookings, processed through a licensed business, filed with state tax authorities. $11,200 laundered through a cash register at a club that had been inspected by county authorities and found compliant. The accounting structure was straightforward. It was not designed by a financial criminal mastermind. It worked because nobody was looking at a small rural club's Tuesday and Thursday booking deposits with any scrutiny. The simplicity of it stays with you. The federal charges filed on July 22, 2026, against Warren Callis, Terry Grubb, and Frank Osei include federal trafficking statutes, conspiracy, and interstate transportation-related charges. The specifics of the indictment are sealed pending arraignment. The van driver faces a federal arrest warrant and remains at large. Attorneys for the 3 individuals in custody entered no plea statements at the initial appearance. The van itself was impounded from the club lot during the search warrant execution. A forensic processing of the vehicle's interior was ongoing as of the filing date. The results of that examination have not been entered into the public record. There are elements of the financial structure that the task force's sealed supplement addresses in detail, but that are not reflected in the public filing. The full scope of Ridgeview Hospitality Group's activity over its 8 months of operation, how many runs the van made, the total financial throughput of the register entries, will be established through the ongoing prosecution. If you want the follow-up when those details enter the public record, drop a comment. This case will have a second chapter. The 4 women recovered from the utility corridor behind Devil's Den were reported as missing from Pennsylvania and West Virginia in the fall and winter of 2025. Their families had been living with open missing persons files for periods ranging from 111 to 132 days. The youngest was 22. None of the public-facing club's staff, bartenders, door staff, service workers employed on the front side of the operation have been charged in connection with the investigation. Whether any had knowledge of what was behind the beverage cooler remains a question the investigation is still addressing. The service road behind the building's north wall, the one not on any map the task force had pulled, connects to a logging road that feeds back to the state route 3 miles north of the club. Where that road leads in the context of the broader investigation has not been publicly addressed. The van driver is outstanding. The network that supplied Ridgeview Hospitality Group with its administrative structure, who established the LLC, who introduced Callis to the operational model, whether Devil's Den was the only venue, is not answered in the July 22nd indictment. Federal prosecutors have indicated the investigation remains open. Devil's Den's liquor license was suspended by the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board on July 22nd. The building is under federal seal. The neon sign is off. 4 women are out of that room. 118 days after the last of them disappeared from a normal American life, a job, a town, people waiting for them, they were transported from a gravel lot in rural Pennsylvania to a regional medical center in the early morning of a Tuesday in July. The van driver is still out there. And the demand that built that room furnished it with 4 cots and kept a cargo van running 3 nights a week on rural Pennsylvania state routes. That demand did not get arrested on July